Hi, welcome to Interface Design, and again, my name is Jeff Raskoff, and we will be talking about the Making App Interface assignment for the Interface Design class. Hopefully you got through the basic Photoshop tutorials that I have posted. If you went through those, you will have a little understanding of how Photoshop works and so on. So this lesson will be a little bit different. It'll be not just using Photoshop with images and photographs and things like that, but we'll actually make a kind of a fake sort of app design that would be like a Santa Cruz tourist app or something like that. So as you can see here, this is basically we're going to be building something that looks like this inside of Photoshop, where we have a photograph, some text, and then some icons that go along the bottom here. And these icons are basically a normal way of navigating through an app called a tabbed kind of menu here. And if you read about it there, I actually have some reading about how and why that's very popular here. If you click on the link here for that, you'll notice that a lot of apps have this tab bar that go along the bottom. So we're basically simulating that in Photoshop, how to make it look like that. And once you've actually simulated it in Photoshop, then all you need to do is take the pieces out and save them, and then go into some programming app like Xcode and build your app very easily. So, basically we're making a sample, and as you can see, here's another one as well. This is a photo app, and you might have worked with photo apps before. You probably take pictures on your phone and you brighten the image or change the color and things like that. So we're basically making a simulation of something that looks like that. So please read this reading about the footer. Sometimes we refer to that as a footer as well. The footer would be the bottom of an app. The most important things we're going to learn about in this lesson, of course, will be screen sizes. What would be the standard screen sizes for certain apps and certain devices. We'll learn to crop an image. Basically, the photo we're going to start with is actually bigger than the window size. So we need to kind of fit the photo to the window size. We're also going to learn to color the image, sometimes referred to as a duotone, or I'm not going to use the actual duotone technique. I'm just going to go and add a color shape over top of the image, and you can see here there's sort of this reddish tint over top of this image here. And then as for this lesson, we actually have to use a little bit of both Illustrator and Photoshop. So hopefully you have the whole Adobe suite installed on your system, because you're going to need to use two applications here. And if you're new to Illustrator, we're not really drawing things in Illustrator. In this class, we're probably not going to be drawing too many things. This Illustrator will be used to convert the objects that you see here, the shapes down here, to shapes that we can use. Then we're going to be scaling images, which means changing the size of them, basically making them all the same size. And then making simple shapes would be the color bar that you see down here, the purple bar or blue bar there. And then combining two photos together, basically combining multiple images together in Photoshop. So in order to follow along, the best thing to do is to download this image. But before I download that, there is some reading here. I like to give you a little guidelines that we like to follow. And so our guideline is going to be, we're going to make an app for tourist app for Santa Cruz. And if I click on there, you can open it up and you can see the requirements that I want you to follow for this lesson. Again, mostly Photoshop. I list some of the skills that we'll be using. So again, we're going to make an app for Santa Cruz. You're basically trying to make it with some navigation so that they can go to different sections of the app. And to do that navigation, again, we'll be using the bottom bar. We're going to make a home button, a restaurant button, a boardwalk button, a fishing, and beaches button. Okay, again, we're just going to make a color mock-up, learning basic Photoshop skills. And that's sort of what I'm looking for you to accomplish in this class is, can I make an interface look the way that I planned it to be? So here we go. Let's get started. Again, I'm going to kind of move this over just a little bit so I can keep this on the screen here. And then, again, I'm going to download this PSD here, this Photoshop file. So I'm going to click on it, and it's going to ask me, what do you want to do? Since I'm on a Mac, it's asking me to open it in Photoshop, which is fine because that's what I do want to do. So I don't know if your computer is configured to do things like that. If they're not, you can right click on it and download it onto your computer, then go to Photoshop and open it up from there. I'm not really sure, so again, you can, I just hit open with Photoshop when I clicked on it, but again, it depends on how you have your computer configured. So again, it's opened up in Photoshop. Another way to get it into Photoshop, again, I'm going to close that and let me minimize this for right this moment. If you're here, you can actually right click on it and save link as. Again, I'm using the Firefox browser, so you know in Firefox it makes it easy for to download. But of course, if you're using Chrome or something, you right click on a file, you can always say download or something like that. So I'm going to save link as. Again, another way to do it would be to right click save link as. And then hopefully you could tell it, put it on, I'm going to just throw it on my desktop for now. So again, save it onto my computer. Then if I open up Photoshop, again I'm using Photoshop 2020 here. And if I go into Photoshop, I can then go under File, Open. And then I can go and find that file. Since I put it on my desktop, it would be there. And then I can go and find my, again it's called Original Small PSD. And I'm going to say Open. Again, so however way you want to get it open in there. So again, this is a photo that my son has taken, so we have the rights to use this, of course. Make sure you try in this class to use photos that you have rights to use, even though we're going to steal some stuff for this assignment. So in this case, the next thing I'm going to do is let's look at making documents. So right now, when you're in a program like Photoshop or Illustrator, you have an artboard window or a window, and I can zoom in and zoom out. I'm going to hold command minus to zoom out, and then command plus to zoom in, out, in. The other thing you'll notice is that things are tabbed up here. So if you watch my first basic Photoshop lessons, I talked a lot about tabs up here and how things are tabbed along the top up here. So next, I want to make a document that has a window that's the size of an iPhone, so that we're making it the proper size. To do that, I'm going to go underneath File, New, and in the File, New window, you'll notice we have Recent, Saved, Photos up here at the top. So at the very top up here, as you move your cursor, there's Photos, Print, which gives you standard sizes. We will do a letter one next week. Art and Illustration, Web, and Mobile, and Film and Video. So in this case, I want to do, of course, mobile, because I'm going to do, if we look at the assignment, let's get back to the assignment here for just a minute. Again, I want you to do for a mock-up for an iPhone 8, 7, or 6 Plus. As you can see right here is the dimension. So again, it's 1242 by 228 pixels. And hopefully you learned what a pixel was in the first basic lessons there. It's basically the dot inside there. And then the PPI pixels per inch. Now, Apple or Adobe makes it easy for you because they have default screen sizes here. So here's the iPhone X. But the next one, at least in here, and if you don't see all these, you see where it says View All Presets right here. And it'll give you all kinds of different sizes as well. You got Androids, you have Microsoft Surface Pros, you got watches, you got old iPhones, you got all kinds of templates as well. There's some templates already built in here, and we'll look at those a little bit later. But right now, I'm not going to use a template. I'm just going to use this basic window right here. Again, I'm going to use the one that says iPhone 8, 7, 6 Plus, and I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to go over here where it says Create, and hit Create. So it makes a window that is the proper size for an iPhone. Now, in this case, we want to be able to take this image that you see here and put it inside this window here. We can do that by copying and pasting. The other thing you might want to have up is the layers window, and we're going to use a lot of layers, and we're going to name things in layers and things like that. So to get to the layers window, if you go underneath Window Layers, if it's not open already, it might show up over here somewhere. Here again, Window Layers. And it might be jammed over here. It might be in a window. So one of the things you're going to have to get used to is how to move windows around inside of the Adobe products and that's quite a challenge at first, and I'll show you a little bit. As you can see, they tab things. Like over here we got channels and paths tabbed over here, and if I go and I drag like the layers and I put it over there, you'll notice it turns blue and it tabs it. So you might see things that are tabbed over here. In order to have things that are floating above windows and things like that, instead of them being jammed in tabs over there, is you can actually grab one of the tabs. Like I'm going to grab that layers one. It might be on your computer as well, tabbed over here somewhere. If you hold the left mouse down and drag out, it should allow you to float it around. And so I'm going to use a lot of layers, so I'm going to stick that out there for right now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take that image that you saw before and kind of copy it and put it into this window. To do that, I'm going to go back to, and I'll notice this one's called Untitled 1 because I haven't saved it yet. And then this one's called Original Small PSD, which, of course, because it is an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy. The first thing I'm going to do is hit Command A on the keyboard. And if you don't like using command keys, you can also use menu items. So as you go across the menus here in Photoshop, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of pull-down menus. Wow, there's a lot of stuff. And we're not going to use probably half this stuff. Probably going to use any of it, really, not too much of it. But one of them is to select all. I want to select this entire image. So if you notice under select, you'll see there's one that says all. Or you'll notice it says command. That's a little squiggly line here with the A there. So if I hit Command A, it selects all. Next, I want to copy this image. So under edit is a copy option. Or you'll notice it says Command C there. So I'm going to copy that. Or hit Command C on the keyboard. Then I'm going to tab back. Again, remember there's tabs up here. I'm going to tab back to my Untitled. I'm going to paste using Command V. Or, again, you can go under Edit, Paste right here. And you'll notice it puts the photo in there. And I can move it around the window. Notice how it's kind of moving around in the window here. So I'm going to kind of put it, you saw my little sample there. And in fact, it's a little small, so I might want to, this is kind of interesting. So I might make it a little bigger there's like little dots. And if you don't see these dots around the outside like you see little squares like mine are, you might have Show Transform tools turned off. And make sure you're always using the top tool right here, the Move tool, when you're using things inside of Photoshop. It moves things around right here. That's why it's called the Move tool. So we have the Move tool and the Show Transform controls here. Both of those allow you to scale this a little bit. I did talk a little bit about how you need to learn to scale things. We'll be scaling pretty much everything that we do in this class. So make sure you learn to use this Move tool and Show Transform tools here. And I'm going to kind of make it a little bit bigger. I want to kind of fill the space a little bit. I'm going to kind of there we go. That's kind of a nice sort of look there. And so that's all I'm going to do with that right now. I'm just going to kind of scale it. So you can move the window around, right? You maybe want it to look like that. Or like my sample, I have it looking like that. But for this sample, I'm going to kind of change it a little bit. I'm going to move it, move it, move it. There we go. That's kind of interesting look, composition-wise. So when you're all done, I'm going to want to color it a little bit. I think I used the word tint before, or in my reading I use the term duotone. Now we're not really going to use a duotone technique for this because it converts from RGB, it converts the color space and all that stuff. So I'm not going to want to do duotone. I just want to add a color layer to it because it's kind of boring right like it is. So to add a color layer, we're going to do what's called an adjustment layer, or actually an effect over top, not an adjustment layer, an effect. To apply a color effect over top of my image here, in the layers, remember I told you to bring up the layers window over here. You'll notice we only have the one layer for our art, for our picture right now. I'm going to go down to, there's like a little FX that's towards the bottom right there. It says FX right there. So if I grab that FX right there, you'll notice there's a bunch of different things you can apply to this layer. Bevel and emboss, stroke, inner shadow, outer shadow, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go to one that says Color Overlay. That'll actually put a color over top of it. And I'm going to click Color Overlay. Now it's kind of defaulted to what I've already applied last time, so yours might be a little bit different. So let's look at some of the settings here. First thing is what color do you want. And yours is probably going to look like that. It puts a whole big color over top of it, and you're like, oh, what is this? I can't see my photo anymore. Where it's basically took a color and put it over top of your picture. That's okay. We're going to use that color to kind of blend with the picture. To do that, you'll notice there's something called a blending mode right here in this pop-up window for this color overlay. And if you click on that, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of them. There's darken, there's multiply, there's linear burn. They all do different effects, and you should really go through and learn them and see which they do, and you know, apply them, try them. Really interesting effects for some of them. I'm going to use the, how about soft light? That looks pretty cool. And if you don't want it to be full blown, and what I mean by full blown, you know, the whole color there's also an opacity slider that allows you to turn it down a little bit so it's not so dramatic. So that looks kind of interesting. I kind of like that. So give some kind of color tone to your image. You don't have to use the duotone technique. I know the other teachers teach something called duotone. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to use the color overlay, and I'm going to hit OK. So this is all done. I like it. I think it's fine. I'm going to lock this so I don't mess with it. What I mean by lock it is that in this layer, and I'm going to actually name this layer. You'll notice I only have one layer so far. It's an image. You'll see there's effects been applied to it, and then a color overlay. If you ever want to get back to that color overlay to change the color and things like that, you can double click on that, and it'll open it up and allow you to make changes to that. If you don't want to even see the effects in these sort of eyeballs that you see here and stuff, there's like a little triangle over here in the layers window. If you click on that, it'll actually close that. It's still there. It's just there. Next thing I want to do is lock this so that I don't mess with it anymore. I have it the way I want it. It looks pretty good. I'm going to lock it. There is a lock option right here. If you notice, it's in the layer window. It's a little lock, and if I click on that, now I can't mess with it or move it. You know, so it helps you from changing it. And then you can actually change the name of it by clicking here. Right now it says layer 1. Let's call this a photo. How did I get it to be blue so I can change the color? So I can type with the keyboard. I kind of double clicked on the words here. So you can also want to keep track of your layers so that you know what they are. So one way to keep track of layers is to name them. I think I talked about that in a previous video. Okay, let's put our text on there. So again, the text is going to be just the word Santa Cruz. So to do that, you'll notice we do have a T over here in the toolbar called for text. I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to make sure I'm using the default horizontal type tool. And I'm going to come over here onto the screen. Now, before you type something in, you might want to choose a font and so on. I'm going to make this kind of big. You know, right now it says Arial Black. You can choose your font. I'd like to use a nice bold font for that, because, you know, I want it to stand out. And so I'm going to use the Arial Black regular, and then I'm going to make kind of big, like 60 point. And then I'm not going to mess with any of the other parts. And I'm going to click on the screen, and it should give you some text. I'm going to type in the word Santa Cruz, S-A-N-T-A, Santa. I'm going to do 2 separate words. Now that's still kind of small, and you're like, oh, wow. Well, you can go and select the text if you want, and then try and type in, you know, maybe type in 120, maybe that, double it. It's still kind of small. Or if you want to scale it, without having to type in and just visually see what size you want it to be, you can actually click on the little move tool right there. When you click on the move tool and you still have the show transform control still selected, you'll notice you get these little squares that go around the outside. These are transform tools. And so if I click on the lower side left corner here, I can drag it and make it bigger. Now I'm not going to hold down the shift key. Now in all the previous versions of Photoshop, all of them, pre-2020, for 25 years now, in order to scale and keep the shape without getting distorted, you had to hold down the shift key. Now, 25 years later, since they've made Photoshop, they've actually changed that. And if you hold the shift key down now, it'll actually get in out of proportion. So they've actually switched the way the scale, and it's been blogging my mind here. That's a word, bogging my mind here, because I instinctively I've held the shift key down for 25 years. Now I don't have to hold the shift key down, and it's really hard on my brain. Okay, let's continue. Sorry, I had to complain about that. So again, that looks kind of nice, and I'm going to duplicate this text and to give me the cruise part. So I want to duplicate. Probably the easiest way to duplicate anything inside of Photoshop is to use the move tool. Again, I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to hold down the option key on the keyboard. So put your cursor over top of the letters here. I'm going to hold down the option key on the keyboard, and you'll notice my cursor changes to 2 arrows. That means it's ready to duplicate. I'm going to hold the left mouse down, and I'm going to click and drag, and it makes a second thing. I'm going to let my mouse up and then let my finger up, and now I'm going to use the text tool again. I'm going to go back to the text tool, and just like you would in Microsoft Word or something, put your cursor towards the end of it. You can drag across and then type in your second letter. Oh, I guess we got, don't forget the R in there. And then when you're done typing in your text, I'm going to go back to the move tool. I always go back to this move tool and kind of move it into place. I'm going to kind of, there we go, something like that. I don't know, but that's sort of all I was looking for you to do. Is that Cruz? Santa Cruz? C-R-U-Z? Cruz? I guess that's right. Next, you'll notice it actually names the text in the layer there, so that's kind of nice that we saw that we can name our layers there by the names of the text that we typed in. So next I'm going to put a blue bar or some kind of color bar that goes along the bottom here so that I can then put in my icons. In this class we're going to use a lot of solid shapes, and if you've used Illustrator or any of those other programs like that, there's a lot of basic shapes we use, like squares, circles, triangles, and things like that. To do that, I'm going to use the rectangle tool that is right here. I'm going to click on that, and it's kind of towards the bottom here. And if you don't see these tools in your toolbar, there's a way to customize your toolbar where it says Edit Toolbar here at the bottom here. And if you click on that, it allows you to change things in your toolbar. I don't know why it's not changing, but whatever. There is like an edit. I don't know. But if I click on the square one, not this square one up here, I know a lot of people think this is a square. That's a selection tool. We want like a normal square shape with a color. So it's a square, and there's more of them. There's square, round, rectangle, ellipse tool, polygon tool, line tool, custom shape tool. We'll be using a lot of these in this class because this is how we make interfaces, by using basic shapes. Using a rectangle, and then there's a color up here. You'll notice it says shape. Make sure it says shape, not path or pixels. I'm going to use shape. And then there's a color here. It says fill, and this color right here, if I click on it, will allow me to choose a color. It has some like default colors in here, or you can see some RGB colors. I don't know. They've changed the way the color palettes are now in this program. It's a lot different than it used to be. But you'll notice over here in the upper right corner, there is a kind of a hue. We call this hue area here. If I click on that, it'll bring out the standard color picker. I'm going to move it around a little bit here so you can see it. This is the standard color picker where you can choose the color along this triangle path here, and then once you choose your color, I'm using like a dark blue here, and I'm going to put white, so it's going to be kind of a darker blue because I want my icons to be kind of white. I tend to use darker backgrounds with lighter text, or sometimes light, just because it's easier to see sometimes. So I'm going to choose a darker color here, whatever. I'm going to do a darker blue, and I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to come down here to that square area towards the bottom there. I'm going to put my cursor in the upper left corner, and I'm going to click and drag and draw a box that fits in that area there for my color shape. So this is going to be kind of where my navigational bar will be. And I'm going to name that actually nav bar. So again, you can go back to the and if it's not quite, there's a little white line that goes along the bottom there. I didn't make it quite perfect. You might need to zoom in and adjust it. To zoom in, again, is Command plus. And then another great way of moving a window around is to hold the space bar down, and you get a little hand, and it moves things around. So again, when I drew my rectangle, it wasn't even perfect there. So I want to adjust it. Again, I'm going to click on it in the layer window here, and I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to scale it. Again, if you're using the move tool and you have show transform tools, it allows you to adjust it, and there we go. I'm going to kind of just adjust it a little bit so that, and you can move it around. You can make it bigger if you want, make it smaller if you want, and there's ways to adjust it. When you're all done, click on the move tool, and we'll be ready to start making the icons. I'm going to pause this video now. This is going to be a two-part video for this assignment. So let's pause it for now. Again, up to this point, hopefully you have some photo with some text and then a bar ready to go for some navigation.